Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到时时刻刻，这里是主播 Nikki。那今天的这期播客有点特别，因为是我们节目的第一期英文播客，也算是一个小小的尝试吧。那在这期节目，我邀请到了我在营养学研究生期间认识的同学，也是我的好朋友 Phoebe， 来和我们一起聊一聊她目前作为营养学博士生的学习和生活。那在之前的几期播客里，我和柱柱有分享我们在营养学本科以及研究生阶段的一些学习经历。如果你对营养学这个专业有持续的兴趣，那往更深一步发展的方向其实就是博士阶段了。那这期节目的嘉宾菲比，她目前正在昆士兰大学读博士1年级，研究的方向是味觉感知和我们所吃的食物之间的关系，以及如何使用遗传方法去探索这些因素如何影响我们的健康。虽然他的项目还处在起步阶段，我们没有办法去深入的讨论具体的研究内容，但这次聊天还是带我们了解了他在博士生活中的一些日常节奏，还有他对科研的真实想法。如果你对博士生活感兴趣，那就一起来听听这期节目吧。Okay, first, hey Phoebe, thanks for saying yes to this. Like, super excited to have you here. And honestly, doing a full podcast episode like in English is a quite challenge for me. So if you ever don't understand what I'm saying, let's just communicate okay. All right. So let's start with a quick intro. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, like your unique background, your life, or anything you'd like to share to our audience?
Yeah, sure. I guess first of all, thanks for inviting me, Nikki. It's my pleasure to be here. And honestly, this English thing is actually on me because my Mandarin is not podcast ready. So I should be the one thanking you for agreeing to do this and accommodating for me. So seriously, thank you for that.
It's okay.
And as for a little bit about me, my academic journey is pretty standard for a dietitian. So I first did my undergrad in nutrition, or technically it's called Bachelor of Health Sciences in Nutrition. And then I went on to do a master's in dietetic studies, which is when we got to know each other, graduated last year together, and then I started my PhD in October. So I'm around 6 to 7 months into the program now.
Yeah, so we're actually in the same pathway to be a dietitian, but a different life after graduation. And as you told me that we have been in a group project in our bachelor.
Yeah.
But actually, I totally forgot that until you realized, actually we're in the same group chat.
Yes, yeah. I didn't realize that at first. But
yeah.
Because you were using Nikki in undergrad, but then I've always known you as Jiayi.
Yeah.
And then it was during COVID, so took a bit of time for me to match.
Yeah. And because during my bachelor, I was just playing with a small group of friends. So I never outreach to other students or something, and always the lecture just in a big class, mixed with all the students from different majors. So just a surprising thing.
It's quite.
Yeah, and that job hunting is a heartbreak for me, and I think I taught a lot for you.
Oh yes, I heard of it.
Yeah. So instead of that, anything you would like to share?
I guess on the topic of job hunting. Part of the reason I started the PhD is because I don't want to go through that job hunting process. I don't have strong feelings against research. So that's kind of part of the reason why I did PhD.
That's fine. We at least seems like we are on the right track right now.
Yeah.
So should be fine.
Can only get better from now.
Okay. One thing that I would like to say is that you are really a huge animal lover.
Yes.
Because every time we met at uni, you always had some new pictures of these cute little creatures to show us. And in my photo in my phone, I still have that photo of the opossum, right?
Possum, yeah.
Yeah, the possum that just popping out in a rice cooker. I saw that. Wow, a surprise to a new day.
That was a legendary moment. Yeah. We actually have a new possum moved in. So back to the rice cooker possum was a few years ago, and I think he was injured, so I had to call wildlife rescue who came and picked him up. And then a few years have passed, we have different possums come and go. But then a few days ago, we found another possum in our shed. In the shed. But yeah, Australia is great. Like I know when people think about Australian wildlife, they always think about like spiders and scary snakes and all that. But no, a lot of them are very cute and small.
Yeah. Sounds like your house just a good place, a good shelter for them.
Yeah.
And actually in uni, I still remember like every time I pass by a like garbage bin or something, there's always some possum just stand around, or otherwise like just on the tree beside the road. There's so many just crawling around everywhere.
They've adapted to urbanization.
Yeah, and like a huge spiders just on the way.
Yeah.
Okay, Australia. Yeah, wild and life. So let's start with an obvious question now.
Yeah.
So what made you to decide to do a PhD?
Yeah. So I guess I've always liked research. I enjoy sitting down and really like dig into a problem, taking my time to think things through, and then trying different angles. And I guess it was also lucky and that it was really good timing. That at the time when we were about to graduate, there was a project opening that I could just jump onto the project. So what I really meant by that is there are actually quite a few different ways people end up doing a PhD. So some people might have a specific topic that they're very passionate about, and then they will reach out to potential supervisors who work in that kind of field, and then they write a proposal to as part of their PhD application. Some other times, a researcher or a research group, they might already have received funding and they have like a predefined project available, and then they're just actively recruiting students to work on them. So that's what happened in my case, and I found a project that resonated with me, and they were happy to take me on.
Yeah, and I think like what is kind of helpful is that at the end of our master, our professor they just sent us an email about like the like potential research that got going on, and like if any student interested in any topics, they can just go to find.
That's I think we might be thinking about the same email. So what happened is, my current PhD, the topic is nutrition, but the actual like background theory and methods that we are using is more closer to genetics, and my supervisor is a genetic person. He wasn't able to recruit any students from his network, so he emailed one of our professors, who then forwarded the email to all the students. And then I guess I was the only one who responded. But yeah.
But I think that's a good way, because like otherwise like for other students like for me, if I didn't have any interest in or like any thinking about research, but like this is a good way to get to know to like be exposed to this kind of topics, and maybe there's just one topic that is you're interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's quite lucky you. You
find
a
grateful and lucky.
That's good.
Something that's worth mentioning is so Nikki and I both did a master's degree, but that's not an absolute requirement to do a PhD. And in terms of nutrition, it can be even more confusing, because some universities like UQ, we have a 3-year undergrad in nutrition and then a separate 1.5 to 2 year master's in dietetics. Whereas other universities in Australia, they might offer a 4-year combined nutrition and dietetics bachelor program. But when it comes to applying for entry into a PhD program, what's generally more important than the specific degree title is demonstrating that you have strong research experience. So for me, that meant doing a research project as an elective during my master's, but there are other ways like doing a bachelor degree with honors. So honors is like an extra 1 year where you only do research, or you can gain relevant work experience as a research assistant, or even get involved in projects through other professional networks if you are someone who is already working in industry. So it's really about showing that you have the skills and the drive to do independent research.
Thanks for sharing. That's actually super helpful. And honestly, this is the first time I've learned that you don't actually need a master's degree to get into a PhD program, because I think this is just a stereotype. Like, because like in China, all the information I can get from social media is like they always thought the only path to get a PhD would be kind of like just you need to get in your bachelor and finish your master, then you can get your PhD. Yeah, so it's not about like different, just maybe just I don't know.
I think it varies by country. Like,
yeah.
So even master's programs, like our program is called master's in brackets coursework. You have masters with just research as well. And to be honest, with our dietetics program, if I didn't do the research elective, I probably wouldn't be able to get in. So it's more about the actual research experience.
Yeah.
So that could be an elective course, it could be an honors degree, or like actual work experience if you are already working in the industry.
I see. So it sounds like they say like more on like you are really liking research.
Yeah.
Then they will select you instead of like, oh, I just pop up a new idea, like, oh, maybe I just want to try the research.
Yeah.
They would, of course, they would say no.
Yeah.
You have never explored to this.
Yeah.
You don't know what actually the research is doing. You don't know if you are really like that or not. Yeah, that's the key point. And I gotta say, research is really not my thing. Like, because do you remember I told you about my community placement project? Like, it was basically a literature review, and honestly, it's such a pain for me because like I need to sit in an office for 8 hours a day, like 5 days a week, and just like looking on my laptop screen and like searching for all the articles and pick up like, okay, these articles may be like useful like for my topic and these are not. Oh, such a nightmare. So many reading.
Yeah, I definitely remember hearing about that, and yeah, I'm actually working on one literature review right now, and it can be quite intense and tedious, but I do think that actually brings up a good point. So like, you know, when people think about research or PhD in general, they picture exactly what you described, like you just endless reading and endless like data analysis. You know, that's certainly a big part of research, but I do think it's a bit more varied than that. So I guess, for example, in my typical week, I have like regular seminars where everyone in our office, so that's everyone in the same floor of our building, we go to listen to other people presenting their research, and they're pretty cool because you get to bounce or steal ideas from each other. Like someone might, so someone might use a method that you didn't really think about and might be applicable to your own project. And you also get to see different presentation styles and learn from each of them, like what works well and what doesn't work too well. And then you also have regular group meetings, which are a bit less formal and smaller than the seminars. So these meetings would involve everyone so that's like researchers or students under the same group leader. And group leader, you can think of it as like the big boss. And in those kind of group meetings, the people tend to be working, like we will all work on individual projects, but it typically overlaps within a specific field. So you can get into more details together, and you can brainstorm solutions to problem and get like more specific feedback from each other. And overall, these meetings are just like you're presenting, but you're not getting examined. It's more just to help you to stay on track and make sure you're moving in the right direction.
Oh, cool. And like when you're talking, let me get my memory back about like during my bachelor, like at my last semester, one of our compulsory courses is biomedical 3 something, and one of the project is that they will assign you a research and you need to write in the paper and making a PowerPoint and a presentation in front of other like students.
Yes.
Like about in 10 minutes.
Was it like biochem or something? It was like a journal club or?
Yeah, journal club.
Yeah.
That's a project.
Yes. Yes, we also have journal clubs.
Yeah.
We also have weekly journal clubs where, you know, you pick a paper and you present it to everyone. It's quite informal. It's on Zoom and slightly different to the group meetings. But yes, we also have a journal club. Whereas, so in a journal club, you present someone else's paper, and then you basically read out the paper, but in like more informal way and with a PowerPoint to support you, and then you can have some kind of discussion and questions back and forth. Whereas in your group reading, you're presenting your own work. So that's like the difference. But then, otherwise, quite a similar concept. Like what you do in that time.
Because why I remember that journal club, because last is the first time I had like hand-on experience about like actually I need to carefully reading a paper and analysis. What's the background, what they did, and what's the result, and I need to prepare what other students gonna ask me about the like kind of potential questions. It's kind of like you share your ideas with others and you exchange each other's thoughts, and like you always maybe you can get some like new points from your discussion.
Or like you know, you wrote the paper, you know your project inside out because you have been working on it, but when you communicate it, other people don't have the same understanding as your level, and then based on the kind of questions they ask, you know what you need to explain better. So there's that. Or based on the questions they ask, you realize you haven't done this part. So it's kind of like that.
That's probably just the point for that project, like just like a basic technique that you need to have for the research.
So for example, someone did this method, and then like which I've only heard about for the first time, I present on it. Then someone asked me, someone in the group meeting or journal club, they might ask, oh, did the authors also look into this? And you know that, because I'm not familiar with this method, I didn't know that was a consideration that's like actually relevant. So you get to learn from the questions as well.
And just like what our like professor always told us, like just treat your customer like they know nothing. You need to explain things like in the most easy way they can understand. So just like actually is also a kind of way like help you to transfer your thought. Translating everything like the whole public can understand. And I'm not sure if that's an accurate comparison or not, but honestly like why I hear you talking about like a group meeting or something, it sounds a lot like how a business runs. Having those big Monday morning meetings and kind of like a department update where everyone just presents what happened last week and what each team achieved and what the plan is for the upcoming week. And then after that, like all the smaller team meetings happen just in your group, like working on a project, something.
Definitely. I know PhD is technically studying, but it does feel like an actual job. Especially if you're in a bigger university. So like you're not just learning theory, you're also applying it at the same time, and you have to like manage your own responsibilities, but also collaborate with others at the same time. And it's actually quite interesting because, you know, Australian universities typically treat their PhD students very much like staff members. So I have staff accounts, I have access to staff benefits, and I'm kind of expected or invited to all activities like any other staff. So it kind of really reinforces that you're doing a professional role and not just like an extended period of study.
That's kind of good. Give you a vibe like steeped in the actually like a corporate vibes. Because like instead of like just like keep studying and after you graduate PhD, and if you want to back to the society, then you maybe would feel like uncomfortable about that.
And I guess adding on to like the corporate vibe, you brought up a good point, because let's say as a researcher you might have to travel somewhere for a conference or like a meeting, and then you have expenses, like you spend money on accommodation, on flights and stuff. So these are things you can reimburse from the university. There's a budget, you can't just reimburse everything. But like,
of course.
So you know, those kind of processes are quite similar to how a corporate or like a company would work.
Because uni is just like a big company.
And
just with different apartment and different things.
Definitely.
My next question is I'm just curious, like how long does a PhD usually take? Because I've heard that some people maybe take like 5 or 6 or even like longer to get a doctor title.
Yes. That's a very quick question, and I think that depends on country. Not the most credible source, but I've seen online when people post their acceptance letter, usually from the States. Their program lasts like 6 years, but here in Australia, or at least at UQ, it's typically designed for your PhD to be completed within 3.5 to 4 years if you're doing it full time. So that's how long your scholarship lasts. Generally speaking, it's actually 3 years, 1 year per project, but then like at the end of each year, you get 3 months to, like, we call it progress review, where you present your 1 year worth of stuff, and then you write a report. So if you have in your 3.5 years, if you have 3 years of actual research, then the remaining half a year is more like your writing and your consolidating time. And then if you do a placement, you can apply for an extension as well. But the maximum is 4 years.
So after 4 years, it sounds not too bad. Most uni like bachelor programs, most of them is also like 4 years. Actually 4 years, just like our bachelor and master.
I mean, I feel like it was yesterday when I started, but I'm already 6 months in.
I'm
already preparing for my first progress.
So I just feel like I graduated yesterday, but I look back, oh no, like next year's students, they already almost graduated, like in
almost a year.
Okay. Yeah, but like 4 years, still like a significant commitment. And what do you think is the biggest difference between like life as a PhD student and the life as a like coursework-based student, just like our master and bachelor's?
I guess it might be obvious, but the biggest difference would be independence. So, in bachelor's and master, there's a curriculum listing what courses and what units you need to do in what order in order to graduate, and then you just attend the lectures, you complete assignments with like deadlines, and your assignments have like task sheets and tell you what to do. But in a PhD, like, you still have deadlines at the end of each year, so those are the progress reviews or milestones I mentioned earlier, and those are to make sure that you're actually doing something. However, within every day or even within every week, it's really up to you how you structure your time and manage your progress. So each supervisor will be different, but they have typically worked with or seen different students over the years. So, they should be able to give you a sense of whether you're on track. They might be able to help you anticipate potential roadblocks or delays. So for example, if you need to sign up access to a specific software, admin takes time, or if you want to go to a conference, you need to start booking early because of all those reimbursement and applications and all that. So yes, they should be able to, a good supervisor will let you know if you are being too slow.
It sounds like having a good supervisor is also maybe have a huge influence. Dietitian, after graduate, you need to find a mentor, because like mentor is also playing a key role, just like a guiding you, walking on the right track, like helping you to find your interest something. Because even we get the master's title, but actually we're still new to this world. We're just new baby.
Very fresh,
So after hearing about your typical week and the time commitment, what would you say the fun and maybe not so fun parts about your PhD life so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's definitely a fair bit to balance. I guess like one of the things I really enjoy is the flexibility. So, I was talking about the meetings. You actually asked me this earlier, like what time do you start and finish? The expectation is that you put in full-time hours, so that's like 9 to 5, but it's not rigid as that. Like there's a lot of understanding that everyone's brain works differently. Some people might have family commitments, or at least in my department, we're quite accommodating and flexible in that sense. So, some people are more productive in the morning, others at night. As long as you turn up to the meetings, because those are shared commitments, and as long as you're actually doing some work, you can otherwise tailor your schedule to whatever suits you. So I guess on the topic of flexibility, there are also conferences and workshops, so that's another opportunity for you to step away from your desk. Like you get to travel, you get to talk to researchers outside your usual colleagues, and I guess those experiences are quite valuable.
Exactly. And I should say getting the flexibility during the work would be a thing for me.
Any workplace?
For any workplace,
I guess I agree.
Yeah.
Well, within limits, like you still have,
Yeah.
as long as your output is there.
Yeah. Like you may just get a little bit of flexibility on handling your time on work. It would be like maybe change your energy you put in your work totally different.
Yeah.
Because after I come to Australia, then I start to know that what is the flexibility work. Because like in a day, you just like you said, actually the company only need you to working for 8 hours, but they don't mind what time you start. You can start at 7 and leave at 3. You can start at 9 or leave at 6. Like it's just up to you. You just need to finish your work, and they don't care about what time you start or leave.
Yeah, I think that ties into like this concept called critical thinking. Like, you know, as long as you do the work, is there really a reason that you have to stick to 9 to 5?
Yeah.
You know, so 9 to 5, the expectation is that you invest 8 hours of work, but then unless you have a meeting where you agree to meet, like everyone has to be there at the same time, I think otherwise you can be quite flexible because there's no real reason to stick to 9 to 5.
Yeah, because like it's unreliable if you need to like have a like meeting
what's
with
the
people
point?
from like international something,
that's
like
true.
different time zone.
Yeah. So also like, you know, if I work better in the morning or if I work better at night, even if I sit here 9 to 5, I might not be as productive. I might not be really I might be physically here, but I don't have the same mental capacity to give you the same performance. But
Actually, my most like energetic and focused time is around like 2 p.m. something. Actually, this kind of flexibility during the work like just makes so much sense. Like it lets people to work when they are at their best, and which means like better quality at work and like maybe way more efficiency overall. Yeah. And by the way, like. Do you remember when we are doing a master's, like this PhD student shared her like experience of going to like Aboriginal community for outreach and education? Like I find it really like interesting because it was the first time I realized that doing a PhD doesn't mean like you always stuck doing like theoretical research or like just paperwork based in uni and just sit there in your office. And actually, once the project reaches a certain stage, there's also an opportunity to get hands-on and apply the research in practice. I think that's like stage that like transfer what you find to the actual what you can do, what you can contribute to the community.
Yeah, definitely. So like, you know, the kind of like translation you're talking about can be talking to community members or even talking to other researchers within the same university but at different departments. So for example, I'm doing genetics things now, but one day I might be going back to the nutrition, like the other end of the campus and talking to our nutrition professors. And then there is also like conferences where you talk to like actual different like researchers from all over the world. So all those are little like different opportunities to translate your research, I guess. So translating and communicating your research is definitely an important skill, but you get like which you will work on throughout your PhD. Obviously, I still have a lot to do in this regard. You have to remember that most people are not familiar with your field, and you know you need to communicate your findings or your research in a way that's clear and engaging as well. Otherwise, your research just have no impact at all. So it's all about like bridging the gap between academia and the real world.
I like the word translating.
I don't know if so there's a specific field of research called translational research. I haven't really fully grasped the concept yet, but they use the word translation a lot.
Because like what actually we are researching for, the aim is about translating. Like in the real world. That practical thing something. Yeah, I like that word. Okay, then back to the topic of flexibility. So, what do you think, like your responsibilities and expectations? Do you manage your tasks and prioritize yourself, or your supervisor would assign you like some work day by day?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a mix of both. So my supervisor would provide like the overall guidance, and he would set like big picture goals, but then I have a lot of autonomy in how I manage my time and kind of prioritize what tasks on a day-to-day basis. So, there are the hard deadlines that keep me on track are the formal confirmation and progress reviews at the end of each year each of the 3 years. And mentioned earlier, so that means aiming to complete one major project per year. So I have flexibility within each month, each week, and each day, but that's the kind. But then the progress reviews are the timeline and expectations that I have to meet. So with my current project, for example, my supervisor, he already had the question in mind. He basically laid out, this is the question we're trying to answer, this is the kind of the data we have available, and these are the methods and tools that people usually use, or I was thinking we could use. And then from there, it's up to me to figure out the specifics, like, what are the actual steps I need to answer the question, like how do I actually gain access to the data, how do I actually load the data into the software or whatever, and how do I analyze the data, and once I have the results, how do I actually interpret the results, like what do the results actually mean, what does the manuscript, so that's the report structure looks like. So it's both, so there's a balance of guidance and independence.
Give you like a certain level of freedom to like explore and try out new methods. That's good. But like at the end of the day, it's still all about like discovering something new, right? Like a totally new area for us. So I feel like if I were in that kind of environment, I'd be great at like executing things. Like if you give me clear goals and a plan, I can definitely get things done, like just step by step. But I'm not sure I'd be the best at like creating something totally new from the scratch, just from this kind of draft. So it's hard for me to picture or coming up with a whole new method or just to prove a goal that based on a theory or assumption. So it's like a kind of personal thing, because I'm the type of person who prefers like pursuing what's realistic and based on facts, and rather than just like imagine things.
No, I can resonate with that. So like I definitely prefer if someone just tell me what to do. And I'm very confident that I can just do it perfectly or like do a pretty good standard. But yes, interesting point you brought up about discovering something new. So I guess when you look at each individual research project, you can there's kind of 3 dimensions to it. So first of all, that's the research question or the hypothesis that you want to test. The second part is the method that you'll be using, or kind of the overall study design. And then the third one is the data set. Whether you are collecting new data or using someone else's data but analyzing it in a different way. And I guess at a PhD or like a junior research level, usually one of those 3 things will be new, but you don't have to come up with like 3 new things. So it doesn't have to be answering a completely new question. You can be asking something simple like, is vegetable good for you? But you might be using a completely new like novel method that no one has heard of, or you might be answering a topic that has been studied a lot usually, and then using very standard and conventional methods, but you are using brand new data from a specific population or a specific demographic, a specific context. So yes, I'm not creative either, but the pressure is not there yet at the PhD level. Only one of those things have to be new, not all 3.
Just getting new evidence.
New evidence. But then at the end of the day, you're still adding to the literature base.
I know, but it's hard to nail things perfectly on the first try, because like always like some just keep trying, keep finding new things.
Like with my current project, I've run the same. So I use R. There's a script, right? I ran the same process, same calculations so many times, because every time I realized I might have made a typo there, I might have made a mistake somewhere else. So but you get better over time.
Lesson in time. And like, how do you usually approach like those kind of studies when you're not familiar with them yet? Like, will your supervisor help guide you through the process and then playing out the steps with you, or is it more likely that you figure it out on your own and just see where it goes?
I guess it varies depending on your supervisor. So, ideally during your first few weeks, you would meet your supervisor and then you guys would set expectations. So you can actually Google something like PhD supervisor expectation questionnaire, and then they will have some great tools to indicate the things that you might want to discuss with your supervisors at the very initial stages. So in my case, I'm new to everything. I went from the School of Human Nutrition to the Center of Population Genetics, and my supervisor is aware of that background. So he was pretty keen on giving me the relevant readings and resources to learn about the basic principles and theories in genetics. And then, so it's not like you're thrown into the deep end without a life jacket or anything. As you progress, especially after the first year, you're expected to take more initiative and be more independent. So I haven't reached that stage yet, so I don't know what that really means. But for now, I have regular meetings with my supervisor to discuss my progress, to go over problems and get feedback. But then between individual meetings, there's probably like a week or two of time where I have to be independent. So if something doesn't work out, I have to try it first before I immediately ask for help. Then it's a bit of a balance as well. So if you're really stuck, you should absolutely reach out, because otherwise you're just wasting time. I guess a general rule, or what I've been told, is spend 30 to 15 minutes trying to figure it out on your own. But if you're still hitting a wall, just ask for help, because otherwise you're just wasting time. And that help doesn't have to come from your direct supervisor. It could be other students who are further along, who start a PhD earlier than you, or it could be postdoc researchers in the lab. So sometimes their understanding is actually more recent, and because they're closer to your level, their advice might be more practical. They understand more why you're struggling. A bit of a balance.
That's kind of good intro for you, for the first year. They do have a big expectation just for you, to settle down.
My department is very supportive. I can't say for all because everyone is different, but
Okay, now let's shifting the gears a bit. As an international student, what do you think is the difference between you and local students, expectations or sponsorships, kind of so on?
It's a very important question. I would say the biggest difference is probably in the scholarship application process. So it's definitely more competitive for international students, as there are just fewer funding opportunities out there. It might be slightly easier if your qualifications are from Australia or even from the same university that you're trying to do the PhD in. That being said, if your qualifications are not Australian, it's not impossible, it's just very competitive. But then once you're actually in the program, I think things level out pretty quickly. So at UQ it's actually pretty diverse. Many of the researchers and the postdocs, they are international themselves, and a lot of Australian PhD graduates end up working overseas after they finish. So I guess in the research world, it's a pretty good mix of perspective and backgrounds. Same with expectations, there are no huge difference, or any difference. We're all held to the same academic standards, and so it's really just the initial part of getting funding or scholarships as an international student.
So it's quite competitive, just it's competitive for the international student to get in the program. Just same area. It's also such an important part of supporting the research journey, because even with the passion, financial support is still the key to making sure everything can actually move forward successfully. That's the key point.
I don't know if you've heard, but in America they're cutting funding. So a lot of PhD students, they either have to wrap up or they just get dropped because the funding is gone now.
I have another question for you. Have you ever heard of the illustrated guide to a PhD? So this is a picture of 12 circles that to represent the wisdom gained through a PhD. And I have to say, it's such a great visual explanation. 那先在这里暂停一下，让我和大家解释一下什么是 The Illustrated Guide to a PhD。这个图表呢是由计算机科学教授 Matt 创建的一个视觉文章。他通过一个简单而巧妙的图表，向我们展示了在整个知识体系中获得博士学位到底意味着什么。那现在大家可以想象一下，在我们面前有一个很大的圆圈，它即代表了现有的所有人类已知的知识。在你通过学校和大学的学习时间，你的知识得到了扩展，那代表你的知识的这个小圆，它就会多了一个指向某个领域的小点，它在向这个圆圈的边缘逐渐的靠近。那学士学位，也就是我们的本科学习，会稍微扩展我们对这一领域的理解，也就是说那个多出来的小点。而硕士学位则深入到了一个具体的领域，那么这个小点就会开始长出一个尖，向代表着人类知识的那个大圆表面去进一步的靠近。那博士学位在这个时候，则是你推动知识边界的时候，在一个非常具体的领域做出微小但原创的贡献。Okay, switch back to English. So, what do you think about this picture, Phoebe?
Okay, well, first of all, your Mandarin, I will never match that level.
That's fine.
But yeah, so with the illustrator guy, actually no, I'm seeing it for the first time when, like, on this podcast, and I have to say it's so accurate. Like, looking back, I thought I knew a lot when I was an undergrad, but the more I study, the more I realize what I don't know, and it's really humbling. And I guess, like, looking at those circles more closely, it makes me think about the impact of research. So sometimes people think, research or PhD is about, like, making these huge revolutionary breakthroughs that can change the world overnight. And, I guess that can happen occasionally, but most of the time, or like 99.9% of the time, it's about making very small incremental contributions that build on existing knowledge. Yeah, so, like, for example, my research is not going to rewrite nutrition textbooks or nutrition guidelines, but I'm hoping that it will help us to better understand a specific aspect of nutrition. So it could help us identify a small but important change in how we approach a problem. And those smaller contributions, when you combine with the work of other researchers, eventually will lead to a significant progress.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think too. Because even if we only add like a small dot each time, but after a while, like more and more people will join too and add their own dots on this like existing boundary of knowledge.
Yeah.
And finally, this big circle, we're getting like bigger and bigger, like
Definitely.
we know more and more about this world.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you've kind of touched on this already. So which leads perfectly into my next question. How do you see your future research? What impact do you think it could have?
Yeah, so my project right now looks at the relationship between, our taste perception and what we eat, and then the downstream effects on our health using different genetic methods. So these are methods and frameworks that are actually quite established and popular in other fields of biomedical science, but they haven't been as popular in nutrition science. And like I said, I'm not expecting that my work will completely change nutrition research. But then I'm hoping that it will contribute to a more nuanced understanding of how, like, genetics and our taste and our dietary habits affect one another, and ultimately that would translate into more effective strategies for preventing and managing diet-related diseases. So it might not be a policy change or like a brand new government initiative right away, but it's about building a solid foundation to inform future research and future guidelines.
Yeah, so true. And I think that's also something that we keep learning from uni too. Like, as we know, initiating a policy change or like leading a new initiative always feels like a long journey.
Yeah.
Like, it needs a lot of evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
And like what you are doing right now is still super important and needed. But taking that first step is always like the hardest like part, but also a good start. Yeah, just start it and do it, and maybe in someday you achieve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And speaking of like long journeys, actually like a PhD isn't like super long about like 4 years, but it's definitely not short either. So do you think it's brought any benefits to you, like aside from just the title of doctor?
Yeah. So I haven't achieved the title yet, but the doctor title is definitely very attractive. I won't lie about that. Yes, but you definitely build up some transferable skills as you do a PhD. So, I'm only 6 months in, but then I feel like I'm getting better at critical thinking and problem solving. So by critical thinking, I mean you really learn to ask why at every single step along the way. So every decision I have to make, like why did I choose this specific data set? Why did I use this particular formula? Everything has to be justified. And you learn to interrogate your own processes, but also ask why when you read someone else's work. And then I guess with problem solving, like you start to think outside the box, you go out of your comfort zone to ask different people or approach the problem from different angles. You learn how to break down the problem into smaller parts, and you try to isolate which step along the process the issue is arising and to understand what's really going wrong. Then there's also the communication that I mentioned earlier, where you need to be able to explain complex concepts to others who don't have the same experience or expertise as you, which is something I still need to work on. And the same with networking. Like I haven't had that many opportunities yet, but I'm starting to appreciate how important networking is. So I'm looking at my seniors who are almost graduating, and just seeing how who is getting jobs and how they're doing it. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, so what did I say again? Just critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and networking. I think these skills are pretty important in any career, really.
Yeah, I think I started to practice these kind of skills. It happened like during my master's. And like during that time, all our projects is about critical thinking, self-reflection, problem solving, these things. And actually this really helpful to me, and I'm still like using these things right now, and I think like this would be quite so useful even in the future when I get in the job or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong transferable skill.
Yeah, that's good. And like for our last question, to wrap things up, do you have any tips for those out there talking about doing a PhD in dietetics? Like any advice for our future Dr. Dietitians?
Yeah, I guess if you ask like other researchers or you look on the internet, a lot of people will say, think about why you want to do it, find a topic that really ignites your passion, because a PhD is a big commitment, and you need that passion to keep you going when things get tough. And yeah, I think that's true, but I also think it's important to look at it practically. So, in my case, when I was approaching the end of the master's, I looked at my career options. I thought about my strengths and weaknesses. I thought about my comfort zone and how much I was willing to push the boundary, or how much I don't want to push the boundary. And and I thought research was a better fit for me in terms of my skills and what I enjoy doing. So I'm not saying I'm perfect at research, but I'm definitely more comfortable and confident in that environment than in clinical practice or something. And maybe it's just a different way of thinking about the word passion, but I think it's important to be honest with yourself about what you're good at, what you're comfortable with, and what you genuinely find fulfilling. And yeah, the other practical side is when you're doing PhD, you typically receive a living stipend. So you get paid, but that's less than a salary from a typical job. And that's your life for the next 3 to 4 years. Money, that's an important thing to consider. And I guess if I'm giving advice to someone who already made up their mind and they know they want to do research, then I guess my advice would be, don't be afraid to reach out to potential supervisors early on, or just like any professors early on. You have to build a good relationship with them. You need to know their working style. They need to know your working style, because they will be your mentor and guide throughout the 3 to 4 years. And even if a professor doesn't end up being your main supervisor, they might have the network or like information into other projects or positions available elsewhere. Like they have colleagues, they have networks. and you also need someone to write your recommendation letter when you're applying. So I needed 2 people, and yes, I had 2 professors who knew my research experience. So yeah, and if you're speaking to professors from your university or your institution, they will also have better and more specific advice as well. So that's about it.
So can I say, like, find your passion about research. Make sure like you are really interested in this area, and then networking. Networking is important.
Yeah.
And I would say like this advice should be quite good to those audience who, if they are like looking for a PhD life or something, that should be helpful. Just like we stand as a student, like a new graduate student, from our aspect to give them. And like in fact, it's something I always say in my podcast. Think carefully before making any decision, especially when it comes like to studying. Like, you know, so many students just pick their major at the start because they are not really sure what they like. Then after a while, they realize, oh, it's actually not my thing. And I'm not enjoyed taking this course, taking this major. And suddenly, uni just feels like a nightmare for them. But with a PhD, I think it should be different because the people who choose to keep studying usually have a real passion for research. Like you said, it's a big commitment. So it really comes down to making a wise choice for your future. You don't want studying to become a burden, and your perspective on this is so important too. And recently, I've been chatting with a lot of people about like life after graduation. And one thing that's really stuck with me is how important it is to define our goals clearly. Like pursuing a PhD, for example, takes over 4 years. And like you mentioned, there are real world considerations. And during that time, your main source of like financial support is probably just project funding. And meanwhile, your friends who graduated at the same time as you might have been working for a few years, they already moved into like a senior roles and built up savings. So it really highlights how much there's to think through before making a decision and ask yourself like what you really want.
Yeah, you've brought up an interesting point, and like I guess this is not strictly about PhD or career choices, but really like just stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Like stop caring where everyone else is at, what everyone else wants to do, and like yourself, ask yourself what you really want. You know, if you are someone who is easily affected by comparison, no matter how much you try, like fair enough, follow what everyone does. But then everyone's path is also different, so what works for one person might not work for another. Yeah, it's exactly like what you said. We all need to take a moment and think, like actually think, use your brain, and about what you value and what's realistic as well.
那以上就是本期节目的全部内容啦。其实在节目录制结束后，我也和Phoebe聊了很多我们的近况，还有这4年来在营养学领域学习的感受，甚至是一些反思。我们都不约而同地提到，如果时间可以倒退回几年前，或许我们会选择另一条路，去看看不同的风景，尝试不同的方向。但是如果你问我们有没有因此对现在的生活感到后悔或者是不满意呢？其实答案是没有。我们都会觉得研究生阶段的学习和实习经历虽然辛苦，但真的让我们也成长了很多，让我们学会了面对挑战和不确定性。人生嘛，总是在后悔中前进的，但每次当我们回头看的时候，那些走过的路里，其实总会藏着一些闪闪发光的片段和珍贵的回忆。如果你正在思考要不要继续深造，或者对博士生活感到兴趣，希望这期节目能带给你一些启发，也希望Phoebe在节目最后分享的那几点建议能为你提供一些实际的参考。这里是主播 Nikki， 感谢你一路听到这里，我们下期节目再见啦。